Okay, so today topic is hypertriglyceridemia, the definition, DNA, diagnosis, diet, and drugs. So lots of which is coming up. Coming to the agenda of the topic, the agenda is very simple. In clinical practice, you can see that the a 45-year-old man who has a history of premature cardiovascular disease. His fasting triglyceride is raised up to a tune of 500 milligram per deciliter. The LDL is slightly raised. The HDL is 30. He's not having diabetes. His thyroid function and renal functions are normal. How you will approach the case? I have tried to make the things practical, and this is very common scenario. And I have taken this clinical scenario from New England Journal Medicine case-based scenario. So this is all about the agenda, but let me start with a question that is there any causal association between the uh, biomarkers and CVD? What are different biomarkers which are available in the clinical practice which correlates with this CVD? LDL, of course, is the one. So you have to choose between all the four. First is HSCRP, second is triglyceride, third is fibrinogen, and fourth is HDL. So out of all these four biomarker, which is the best suitable option? So since the talk is on triglyceride, anybody can guess that it is triglyceride, but believe me, the triglyceride is the correct answer, and you will surprised to know that HDL has got no causal association with the development of cardiovascular disease. That is the information I want to give. So what is the Mendelian randomization study from which this inference has drawn? Suppose you have a randomized control trial from a drug. You tend to randomize the group into two parts. In one part, drug A is given. In second part, the placebo is there standard as a standard care, and you compare the both. And after that, you see for the biomarkers and ultimately the cardiovascular outcome. Likewise, the different genes can also be segregated into two parts to correlate with the biomarkers, and ultimately cardiovascular outcome can be detected. And this type of the study is known as Mendelian randomization studies. Okay, so with this Mendelian randomization study, we have come to the conclusion that LDL cholesterol, lipoprotein A, triglyceride, interleukin 6, systolic blood pressure, and body mass index. These are the parameter which correlates with the cardiovascular disease. Unfortunately, the HSCRP, HDL, the fibrinogen, these are not associated with the cardiovascular disease. So, uh, coming to the bigger question that is triglyceride is only merely a biomarker or it is more than that? So probably it is more than that. Let's see why it is. The study which has proven that the triglyceride component genetics of ApoA5 has increased chances of cardiovascular disease. Every 39 milligram per deciliter increase of non-HDL will increase the cardiovascular risk by 2.8 times. And loss of function mutation of ApoC3 is associated with reduced cardiovascular risk. The ApoC3 mutation, loss of function mutation, will lead to decreased triglyceride. So all these points are sufficient to prove that the triglyceride is more than a biomarker. So, but we don't have the exact tool to modify it. Maybe in future we may have better therapy to uh, target triglyceride, so that in Indian perspective we can get better results. So what are different epidemiological data in favor of this? The data from the National Health Institute Examination Survey database from the USA uh, from 1999 to 2016 shows that there is a trend towards improvement in all the lipid profile parameter, being the LDL, non-HDL, triglyceride, and HDL. But the improvement is not optimal. So LDL reduction is only up to a tune of 24%. The triglyceride reduction is up to a tune of 28%. While the guideline says that more than 50% of LDL reduction is required in high risk cases and up to 45 to 48% non-HDL reduction is required. With the availability of the high dose statin and PCSK9, probably you are going to achieve the LDL-C. But what about triglyceride? We don't have much option left in this area apart from the medical nutrition therapy and recently the high dose omega-3 fatty acid. So still more to be discovered in this particular area. So newer therapeutic options are need of hour to target the non-HDL and triglyceride therapy. And this is particularly important if you are dealing with a woman with a high cardiovascular risk. You all know that statins are not effective in women, particularly in premenopausal age group. And the triglyceride may be the one of the reason why these women are not responsive to the statin therapy because you are not targeting triglyceride. So what are different clinical trial? The 4S trial, which has shown that there is no association, later on prove it, and the pool analysis of TNT and IDL trial has shown that there is a trend towards the association between triglyceride and cardiovascular disease, but the association was lost once it was adjusted to the HDL value. Recently, the field trial and ACCORD trial has also come out with the negative cardiovascular outcome or neutral cardiovascular outcome. So, is it the full stop of the TG story? The answer is no. Certainly not. Even if it is there that the association is lost, there are certain quartile of the HDL where the correlation is still not linear, and there is a role of triglyceride. And apart from that, the epidemiological study, once you look into the pooled analysis data of different epidemiological studies, you will get the answer that there is certainly a trend. Certainly, we need more number of Indian data, particularly the population who are having high triglyceride or genetic variants with the high triglyceride should be evaluated. So what are different epidemiological studies? This you can see the EPIC Nordic study, the CCHS studies. All these studies have shown that triglyceride has a relation with cardiovascular disease, but once it is adjusted to the HDL, the association is lost. So what investigator has done, they have analyzed the data in a pooled analysis. Once the pooled analysis data was analyzed, like a meta-analysis, it has been found that every increase of plasma triglyceride level 89 milligram per deciliter, the relative risk of CVD range from 1.14 to 1.18. So certainly the triglyceride increase is associated with cardiovascular risk independent of age, sex, race, and HDL cholesterol also. So pooled data analysis has different things in the outcome. So let's see the one more thing. The lower the triglyceride value, better is the cardiovascular outcome. So if you have targeted the triglyceride value less than 200 milligram deciliter, probably the outcome is better. And Reduce It trial has nicely showed it that if you target the TGL less than 200, probably outcome is better. So lower TG, lower cardiovascular risk. And why the finding is like this? Because the LDL cholesterol underestimates CVD risk in case of hypertriglyceridemia. This is very important concept. Look at the LDL-C at the the HDL level of 130. If the triglyceride is high, the number of particle of LDL increases, which can be counted with the help of ApoB. So if ApoB count is high, probably there are more number of atherogenic particles and the small dense LDL are more. So if a patient is having LDL cholesterol level and still the high residual cardiac risk, the ApoB can be a better indicator, or you can say non-HDL cholesterol can be a better indicator. Is there something better than this, the ApoB? The answer is yes. Let's explore this. So the other part of the story is there are markers which correlates with the atherosclerosis, and these atherosclerotic molecules are IDL, VDL, chylomicron remnant. Taken together, they can be termed as triglyceride rich uh, lipoprotein, and at the higher triglyceride level, these levels are increased. So these TGRLs are more atherogenic than LDL. Are they more atherogenic than LDL, which is the common normal practice in clinical practice and normal teaching? The answer is yes. They are more atherogenic than LDL-C. Okay, why it is so? Let's explore. The answer lies in basics. You all know that the lipoproteins are two type: anti-atherogenic and atherogenics, and these are the basic structure. I am not going into the details of all these lipoproteins, but you summarizing this, there are two kind of apolipoproteins: the ApoB100 and ApoC. They are atherogenic, and other component is ApoA1, ApoC2, ApoE, and they are anti-atherogenic. So there is a protective molecule and there is a atherogenic molecule, and probably a subfraction of atherogenesis can be only be measured with the help of ApoC. So in near future, the ApoC is one thing which is going to get importance in near clinical future, and the drugs which are targeting ApoC are now in pipeline. Many of them has been approved also. So we are looking into it with what is the clinical evidence which is building up, and whether we can use this in future or not. So coming to the basics of the cholesterol metabolism, the free fatty acid is absorbed and it is packed into the triglyceride with the help of the MTP. The cholesterol is absorbed with the sterol transporter. Here ezetimibe is a molecule which can inhibit the cholesterol absorption, a drug which lowers both cholesterol as well as triglyceride. Why triglyceride? The reason is very simple: the chylomicron is decreased. And second part is the MTP inhibitor. You see here the MTP is the molecule which packs the cholesterol ester into the chylomicron, and if you inhibit this, there can be the reduction of triglyceride, as well as if there is a congenital absence of this molecule, there will be a beta lipoproteinemia. There is an exogenous pathway. Once the chylomicron is absorbed, it is hydrolyzed by the lipoprotein lipase into the chylomicron remnant, and chylomicron remnant can be taken up by the liver with the help of LDL receptor. The LDL receptor here, the ligand is ApoE. So ApoE is a protective molecule, so it is anti-atherogenic. Suppose there are subtype of ApoE which are hindering the LDL receptor interaction, the chylomicron remnant will remain there inside the blood, so it will become more atherogenic. So here the activity of lipoprotein lipase and the affinity of ApoE to the LDL receptor will decide whether the chylomicron remnant are formed in excess or not, or whether they are going to be cleared from the circulation timely or not, and this will further decide the atherogenicity. Second part is the endogenous lipid pathway, where the liver is producing the VLDL, subsequently it is changing into IDL, LDL, and LDL is taken up by the LDL receptor. Look at the size gradually decreases, but at the LDL you can see here the ApoB100. This is the only apolipoprotein which is present on LDL, and LDL is relying heavily on this ApoB100 to be cleared from the circulation. So it stay into the blood for the longer period of time. So chances of oxidized LDL will be more, and they will be more atherogenic. So anything which is affecting the LDL uptake may affect the atherosclerosis process. And the condition like hypothyroidism, where LDL clearance is decreased, it will stay inside the blood for longer period of time, subsequently more oxidized LDL, subsequently more atherosclerosis. But the important point is the VLDL, IDL, and LDL, all three are atherogenic. So this is very important concept. And the factor of lipoprotein lipase activity will decide whether there will be excess VLDL, IDL, or there will be a ample amount of good LDL to be cleared by the liver. So if the LPL activity is less, the more and more chylomicron remnant, more and more IDLs will be there, and the HDL, the LDL will be more atherogenic. It will be containing more cholesterol. Small dense LDL will be more. So what are different factors which modifies the LPL activity? So look at here. Here you can see there are inhibitors of LPL. They are ApoC3, which I was already pointing out. The ApoC3 is the molecule which inhibits the lipoprotein lipase. So once it is inhibited, the chylomicron remnant and the ideal, the triglyceride rich proteins will be, lipoproteins will be more. So there are more atherogenic molecules, and the LDL will be more condensed. So anything which is inhibiting the lipoprotein lipase activity like ANGPLAT and ApoC3, if the activity is more, atherogenesis is more. Likewise, the other thing, if the ApoC2 activity is more, atherosclerosis will be less. So this is the all concept of the basic lipidology linking into the target of the therapy. So these inhibitory molecule can be a therapeutic target, and the gene which are encoding all these molecules can be a candidate gene for heterozygous hypertriglyceridemia. So triglyceride rich related proteins, all three molecules, look at the chylomicron remnant, the LDL, the IDL, the VLDL, they are all taken up by the macrophage, and they are all atherogenic. And which is the most important factor? The ANGPLAT3, ANGPLAT4, and ApoC3. These are the important molecule which will decide whether you are having increased amount of triglyceride rich lipoprotein or not. So if they are more, the atherogenesis will be more. So atherogenesis of these triglyceride rich lipoproteins are mediated by ApoC3, as I have already told you, and ApoC3 is an enzyme which interferes with the ApoC3. So this is all theory. Many people may say that, okay, these are the theory. What is the actually clinical relevance of this information? So here is one study which is published in NEJM 2014, which has clearly shown that loss of function mutation of ApoC3 is associated with reduced ischemic vascular disease. So ischemic cardiovascular disease as well as stroke and other ischemic vascular disease all are decreased if there is loss of function of mutation. Okay, so these what I was telling, that triglyceride rich related proteins, they are having more atherogenesis than LDL. So they are probably more atherogenic than LDL. And why I am saying so? Because they are like the cholesterol, but the proportion of cholesterol per molecule is more in these triglyceride rich or you can say remnant cholesterol. So these triglyceride rich lipoprotein or remnant cholesterol are rich in cholesterol. They are similar to the LDL. They can easily penetrate into the endothelium, and they can be easily uptaken by the macrophage, requiring no extra oxidation or no extra receptors. Scavenger receptors are already present on the macrophage, and they will easily take up all these things to cause atherosclerosis. So 4 points, 5 to 20 times more LDL. They are like LDL molecules, small enough to go inside the endothelium. They attach with the positively charged collagen, and they don't need oxidation. They can naturally cause atherosclerosis. There is one important point, that chylomicron is too big to penetrate inside the endothelium, hence it is not atherogenic. And how it causes atherosclerosis? By doing endothelial dysfunction, coagulation, cytokine regulation, and inflammation, and these molecules are inflammatory also. You can see here in the endothelium, in blood and interstitial flora, these causes inflammation, hence atherosclerosis. So it is clear that the remnant cholesterol are more atherogenic than LDL cholesterol, and they are probably the target to cover the residual cardiac risk after you have maximally reduced the LDL cholesterol. So what is the classification of hypertriglyceridemia? Different bodies has given a different definition, but you have to understand why they have classified like this. So the basic purpose of classification is to segregate the mild to moderate hypertriglyceridemia in the range of 150 to 180. These are the subgroup of patient where premature cardiovascular disease are more. So these are the patient who should be targeted. And second, in all the definition, you can see the finding is constant, and so mild to moderate hypertriglyceridemia is very important. And second part is, if person is having severe hypertriglyceridemia, the chances of pancreatitis is more, while the premature cardiovascular disease is less. So the basic purpose of classification is to segregate these two. One, increased chances of pancreatitis. Second, increased chances of premature cardiovascular disease, so that therapy can be planned. Okay. So let's come to the classification of the hypertriglyceridemia. The classification of the Fredrickson classification of this hyperlipoproteinemia, it is a very good classification for the familial hypercholesterolemia, but it doesn't hold good for the hypertriglyceridemia, because it covers only 1 to 5% cases of familial hypercholesterolemia only. So this classification is not good for hypertriglyceridemia, because it is predominantly, it has failed to show any genetic prediction. In case of triglyceride, it has failed to show any predictive value in terms of cardiovascular risk factor, and there is no role in deciding the therapy of hypertriglyceridemia. So neither it predicts in terms of genetics, neither it predicts in terms of cardiovascular disease, neither it is helpful in deciding the triglyceride treatment regime. So it is not a valid classification, and reason is very simple, that most of the severe hypertriglyceridemia are polygenic in nature. Very few patients are monogenic. So we require a different kind of classification for the hypertriglyceridemia, and nomenclature like familial hypertriglyceridemia is not is maybe misleading. And why it is misleading? Because there can be multiple small effect variants. Each small effect variants are causing increase of triglyceride level to some extent, and once there are multiple small effect variant, it will add up into severe hypertriglyceridemia, while one large effect variant can cause severe hypertriglyceridemia. So it is polygenic in nature. The environmental factors are playing role, multiple genes are playing a role. So the nomenclature like familial hypertriglyceridemia doesn't hold true in clinical practice. While if you are talking about the monogenic hypertriglyceridemia, it holds true, because most of the factor which affects the lipoprotein lipase activity, any gene which is pertaining to the lipoprotein lipase function may be a cause of monogenic hypertriglyceridemia, as I have explained earlier. And these patients are having predominantly chylomicronemia, and the chylomicrons are increased, and premature cardiovascular disease are most of the time absent, and they are more prone for acute pancreatitis. What about the multigenic hypertriglyceridemia? There can be severe hypertriglyceridemia with multiple small variant of the triglyceride, and it has been shown that if the value is more than 300, there is likelihood that 2.5 times more chance that you will get one particular rare variant of the heterozygous loss of mutation. So heterozygous loss of mutation can be there if the triglyceride value more than 300, but severe hypertriglyceridemia can also occur with the small effect variant. What is the small effect variant? These are the variants which will increase the triglyceride level to a small extent. But since they are large in number, ultimately they are adding up and severe hypertriglyceridemia is there. So how you will determine that these are adding up? This can be determined with the help of genetic risk score. And how genetic risk score are identified? With the help of this chart. As you can see that different mutation has got different weightage, and you can see this mutation, this has got a greatest weightage. So even if in between the small size variant, there can be increased chances of hypertriglyceridemia. So this is the concept now. So if the triglyceride is more than 2 millimole, that means if you multiply with the 89 into 2, around 200. Suppose the values are more than 200 to 880. These are the subgroup of the patient where multigenic hypertriglyceridemia exists, and after the 880 value, the monogenic value predominates. So in this quadrant, the monogenic variant can be identified, and in this quadrant, the multigenic variants can be identified, and accordingly for this group, the genetic counseling can be done and these can be prevented. While in this disorder, the secondary cause of hypertriglyceridemia becomes very important and it should be ruled out. And accordingly, therapy can be planned because these are the subgroup of patients they will have more increased cardiovascular risk. So redefining the primary hypertriglyceridemia, this is the new classification. And coming to the next issue, whether fasting samples should be taken or non-fasting sample should be taken. So most of the time it is said in clinical practice that triglyceride is having long variation in fasting and non-fasting value, and the postprandial value increased to 4 to 5 times after 4 hours. So this is the actually rule of 4 which we tend to remember in our residency time. So the postprandial value tends to increase, so that there is lot of variability. So if the triglyceride is increased in non-fasting, it should be repeated in fasting level. But the point is the postprandial value correlates better with the cardiovascular risk. So our purpose of doing lipid profile in our patient is to predict the risk of cardiovascular disease. So probably in this subgroup of patient where we are not expecting primary hyperlipidemia, the purpose is to evaluate cardiovascular risk. Non-fasting sample is probably a better strategy than fasting sample. And second more important thing is, if you are doing non-fasting triglyceride level, there will be a error in calculating LDL-C by Friedel-Wald equation. So nowadays scientists are doing the another equation that is called as novel formula, and with the help of this novel formula there is a TG correction. There is already a chart for each triglyceride quartile and you can calculate the LDL-N. So these LDL-N are better correlated with the cardiovascular risk. So in clinical practice, what I am practicing in my clinical practice, we are taking non-fasting sample, we are calculating the LDL-N, and likewise we see the triglyceride value and non-HDL value, and risk can be calculated. Second more important point is, since we are dealing with more and more diabetic patient, if the diabetic patient you are getting the triglyceride value, these triglyceride values are fallaciously high, they are spuriously high because they comprise of both triglyceride as well as the free glycerol value. So free glycerol and triglyceride value, though the both can be added up, so this is spuriously high. So how to negate this? With the help of the ultracentrifugation and electrophoresis. Most of the time it is not available in clinical practice. So this is all theory, no conclusion. What guideline says? What guideline says is, if you are having triglyceride value more than 440 milligram per deciliter, the sample should be repeated in fasting. And in a non-fasting state, the abnormal value is 175, while in fasting stage, the value is 150. So how to evaluate hypertriglyceridemia patient? If any patient who comes to you with increased triglyceride level, always ask for the premature history of cardiovascular disease, evaluate for multiple cardiovascular risk factor and calculate the ASCVD risk. If the ASCVD risk is more than 7.5, probably the increase of triglyceride is important. And if you further measure the ApoB, which will tell you the particle count of LDL, it can be very helpful. And if the ApoA1 is measured, it will further differentiate hypolipoproteinemia. So the first step is to rule out the secondary cause of hypertriglyceridemia, different disease condition and drugs, alcohol. And second more important point is, if you are dealing with any value more than 2000 milligram per deciliter, most of the time it is because of the secondary hypertriglyceridemia. This is the approach of hypertriglyceridemia which I have taken from the New England Journal of Medicine, where you can see the role of ApoB, ApoA1, which I have already stated. What are different other clinical features? Palmer xanthoma, eruptive xanthoma. Palmer xanthoma are very rare. Eruptive xanthoma is also rare. Lipidemia retinalis, the pale retina in the periphery, they are also rare, but still, if you can elicit all these clinical features, you will get to the diagnosis. One important point is the familial partial lipodystrophies, which can be diagnosed with the help of minute clinical examination, and subscapular is to cuff skin fold ratio more than 3.5. So redefining hypertriglyceridemia on basis of different treatment target. So if the values are more than 500, most of the time the lifestyle intervention is required and lipid lowering therapy is required. For the values in between 200 to 500, most of the time these are the patients who are having increased risk of cardiovascular disease. Non-HDL should be targeted, and if still triglyceride is high, the triglyceride lowering drug should be started to the patient. Suppose ASCVD risk is more than 7.5. That is the crux of all these things. So why we need a therapy to reduce the triglyceride? Because there is a residual cardiac risk. In spite of lowering the LDL cholesterol, there are triglyceride rich remnant particles. They are more atherogenic, or at least as atherogenic as LDL. They are raised. So we require a therapy to target this. Until unless we target this remnant particle, we will not get success in future. So nowadays the therapy targeting these are available, like high dose omega-3 fatty acid, the antibody based, and oligonucleotide therapy. These are the therapy which I am going to talk in my next part of the talk. So how to approach the triglyceride level if the LDLs are raised? First, the LDL should be treated, and if after treatment of LDL the non-HDL goal is raised, look for the triglyceride. If the triglyceride is less than 10 millimole per deciliter, that means around 880, these patients should be evaluated for cardiac risk. The statins should be intensified, the LDL therapy should be intensified, and after that fibrates and omega-3 fatty acids should be added. If the hypertriglyceridemia is more than 880, the therapy for the pancreatitis should be targeted, and omega-3 fatty acid and fenofibrates should be started in this type of patient. And sometime, in spite of all these therapy and lifestyle intervention, it is not controlled. The experimental therapy like anti-oligosens, oligonucleotide ansplat should be started in this type of patient. So what are different lifestyle intervention in case of triglyceride, increased triglyceride? The weight loss, the exercise, alcohol and diet. Look at the smoking. The smoking has no effect on TG lowering, while the weight loss, exercise, alcohol and diet, these are all having positive effect on the triglyceride. So what are different clinical trials which are available for the triglyceride therapy? In past, there are a few trials which has targeted the fibrates, and important trials are field trials and ACCORD trial, which has shown that there is no benefit. While the niacin trial has also failed, like AIM High trial and HPS2 Thrive trial, they all failed because there were no statistically significant cardiovascular outcome. But recently, the high dose omega-3 fatty acid, particularly the REDUCE-IT trial, earlier the trend was towards the benefit in case of JELIS trial, a Japanese trial, and after that REDUCE-IT trial has conclusively proven that if you target triglyceride, you will tend to get the benefit. So apart from this, there were indication from meta-analysis of the all trial. Like if you analyze the pooled data of ACCORD, FIELD, HSSS, the first AIM high and the JELIS trial, you will see that if you analyze the total data, it is not statistically significant. But if you analyze the subgroup data where triglyceride is increased, there is trend towards benefit. But if you analyze a patient who are having increased triglyceride and low HDL, there is conclusively a benefit. So probably a subgroup of patient where increased triglyceride is there and low HDL cholesterol are there. These are the subgroup of patient which are going to be benefited maximum with the triglyceride therapy. So you need to customize your therapy. So let's talk about the REDUCE-IT trial, which is very important trial. So in this trial, the 70% patient were from the secondary prevention cohort and 30% patient were primary cohort. The heart failure patient were excluded, uncontrolled diabetes and severe liver disease were excluded in this. What this trial has shown that conclusively there is a benefit in terms of primary endpoint as well as secondary endpoint. And this has shown that across the level of triglyceride, irrespective of level of triglyceride, whether the baseline triglyceride is more than 200, more than 150, less than 150, or HDL triglyceride ratio is increased or decreased, there is benefit both in terms of primary outcome as well as in terms of secondary outcome. So these are beneficial across all quartile of the triglyceride. And you can see here, every 1,000 patient you will treat, the 159 primary outcome reduction you will achieve. And look at the coronary revascularization. So it is decreased up to a tune of 76. So every 1,000 patient you will treat, 76 patient you will prevent the coronary revascularization. And apart from this, all other markers are also benefited. So this is going to a very promising drug if it is available in India. The results of REDUCE-IT trial has shown that not only the primary event, the second event and third event, there is consistent. So this is another way of analyzing the data. If you analyze the data, these second and third events are also beneficial, which you can see here in the depiction from an article from Deepak Bhatt, which has recently published, and you can see here that the coronary revascularization in subsequent event in first and the second and third visit, this is reduced up to a tune of 60%. So what are the treatment options for severe hypertriglyceridemia for the acute pancreatitis? For the acute pancreatitis, you just give the hydration with the help of normal saline, give the heparin, or if patient require insulin, the triglyceride can be decreased. The primary lipid lowering therapy is fibrate and omega-3 fatty acid. And if the risk is high, like if non-HDL levels are high, you can increase the dose of statin, ezetimibe, or PCSK9. So what are other novel therapy which are coming in the area of hypertriglyceridemia? So high dose EPA, that is from the REDUCE-IT trial. Another trial which is in progress, which is evaluating the EPA plus DHA, that is called STRENGTH trial. They are using these two agents on the top of statin. The data is still to be disclosed, and probably it will come in 2021. The fibrate, the prominent trial. The other antisense oligonucleotide first generation, that is Volrusran, this is approved in Europe. People are using in severe hypertriglyceridemia. The antisense ApoC3, this is antisense oligonucleotide next generation. These are being used. An important point is that they can be a add-on therapy to statin in ASCVD risk patients. So watch out for this drug for the future. So it may be a one drug which can target the mild to moderate hypertriglyceridemia. Evolocumab, that is the anti-plat antibody. So it is also available. So you can see there is a lot of drugs which are available. Apart from this, there is a gene therapy also approved for the LDL gene. The severe hypertriglyceridemia patient where lipoprotein lipase deficiency is there, this gene can be transferred with the viral like protein vector glybera, and patient of severe hypertriglyceridemia can be cured. So these gene therapy, once the vector is transferring the genome inside the cell, either it can silence the microRNA or it can it will degrade the microRNA. So that is the way of action of all these drugs, and this is not in theory. Actually, it is proven by the trial that antisense oligonucleotide against the ApoC3 molecule has led to the prominent reduction of triglyceride, and probably in future they can be tried in mild to moderate type of hypertriglyceridemia also, because in REDUCE-IT trial it has been shown that once you reduce the triglyceride value less than 200, the SAVI benefit is there. So watch out for this drug also, there can be beneficial effect. So summarizing all these, the drugs can be classified into three parts. One drug which is acting on intestine like ezetimibe, the GAT inhibitor, bile salt sequestrants, and second is on the fatty acid synthesis like the statin, fibrate, and bempedoic acid. Another is the MTP inhibitor. Look at here, the MTP inhibitor. The VLDL secretion will be decreased. Another will be the lipoprotein lipase modifiers like this molecule. These are the glybera, the antisense oligonucleotide of ApoC3, and SPLAT antibody. So all these agents which are acting here, that can be used to reduce the triglyceride. So key takeaway, there is a causal association, Mendelian causal association between CVD and triglyceride, the HDL as compared to HDL. The new TGL lowering therapy is needed to address the residual cardiac risk. Every 89 milligram per deciliter reduction in triglyceride will have a cardiovascular benefit. The LDL cholesterol underestimate the cardiovascular risk in case of hypertriglyceridemia. The triglyceride remnant protein are more atherogenic than LDL-C. The modification of ApoC3 may be an important strategy to reduce the remnant cholesterol, hence the atherosclerosis. The newer classification of hypertriglyceridemia will help you to segregate the patient who are having premature cardiovascular disease. The non-fasting triglyceride may be more useful in terms of predicting cardiovascular disease, and the corrected Noel formula of LDL-N should be used in this scenario. The hypertriglyceridemia more than 880 is prone for pancreatitis, while moderate hypertriglyceridemia from 150 to 880 is more prone for premature cardiovascular disease. High dose EPA are very useful in reducing cardiovascular risk. The lifestyle intervention and secondary cause, ruling out secondary cause, are most important cause to reduce the triglyceride. The newer therapy like fibrate, omega-3 fatty acid, ApoC3, antisense oligonucleotide, and glabella are very important to treat severe hypertriglyceridemia, while EPA and pimafibrate, the selective PPAR modifiers, and next generation ApoC3 antisense oligonucleotide, evolocumab, antibody against ANGPLAT, they are a very important new target for the moderate hypertriglyceridemia. So thank you very much